November 1970, the quest for control. It was in November 1970 that United States President Richard Nixon promised the gradual removal of troops from Vietnam. In Northern Ireland we seemed to be having the opposite, with a greater need for British Army involvement and the recruiting of more RUC officers. As one war eased, another escalated. What a world we live in, eh? November 1970 began with a meeting of the Joint Security Committee at Stormont Castle on the 5th. There were a couple of interesting points discussed during this meeting. The Assistant Chief Constable, Crime Special Branch, said it had not been possible to pinpoint the area in which IRA training was taking place, but there was reason to suspect a location on the southwest shore of Lough Neagh. The GOC said the Army would be happy to assist in the investigation. The GOC commented on the Ardoyne riots on the 30th of October. It was a small-scale affair involving small groups. The initial Army fire was unfortunate, adding to the tension and putting the officer commanding rather on the defensive. The weapons used against the Army were thrown, not from the front of the groups involved, but over walls and houses. It, therefore, was not possible to establish a target for search or other positive action. The petrol bombs thrown were not thrown lethally. There was therefore no justification for firing to kill. Nevertheless, he had issued orders for quicker and tougher action in future street confrontations, e.g. more extensive use of rubber baton rounds, and quick and selective pursuit searches where there was a reasonable expectation that an area was likely to be harbouring attackers or weapons. Expert search squads had been trained. It was important not to overdo reaction, and dangerous, therefore, to give the soldiers too much freedom of action. He felt the extremists were being isolated and would be therefore easier to deal with. On the 12th of November, the Northern Ireland Housing Executive was formed. The NIHE gradually took over control of the building and allocation of public sector housing in Northern Ireland. The responsibility for public sector housing had previously rested with the local government and the Northern Ireland Housing Trust. There had been many allegations of discrimination in the provision and allocation of housing by the various local government councils in Northern Ireland, and this was the main reason for setting up the Housing Executive. 2 further deaths in the timeline occurred on the 16th of November. The IRA shot dead 2 Catholic men, Arthur McKenna, 35, and Alexander McVicker, 35, as alleged criminals while the 2 were repairing a car on the Ballymurphy Road, Belfast. The men were alleged to have been involved in protection rackets, fencing stolen goods, minor racketeering, money lending, burglary and robbery. This was the first occasion on which the IRA had killed anyone alleged to have been involved in criminality. As reported by the Irish Times, the 2 men ran a gambling den in a disused house between Ballymurphy and Beechmount in the Upper Falls Road area. McKenna was described by people who frequented the pitch and toss school as a gentleman gangster. He stood guard outside the gambling school, it is said, sometimes armed with a submachine gun. He ensured there were no serious arguments and that anyone who won money was safe to leave without being robbed. Likewise, anyone who welched on debts or incurred their anger faced the prospect of a very severe beating. Gusty Spence knew McKenna from before the Troubles, when they would meet in bars in Belfast city centre. He described him as a tough monk. The Irish Times article was fascinating, as the story takes a few twists and turns in relation to Arthur McKenna's brother. It really is like something from a Liam Neeson movie. On the 18th of November 1970, Chief Constable Mr. G. E. Shillington conducted a news conference on policing within Northern Ireland and the RUC. Shillington was taking over from Arthur Young, who had announced his intention to resign from the post back in September. There's quite a lot in his statement, but an interesting point that I picked up was, the objective of the Royal Ulster Constabulary, as of any police force, is to provide a fair and impartial service to all sections of the community. It is a simple fact that no police force can operate successfully unless it has the cooperation and support of the general public. I found the piece about fairness and impartiality particularly interesting, as it has since come to light, from many sources, that there was indeed some underhandedness and collusion within the RUC during the Troubles. Maybe this at the time was seen as a way to get control of the situation that didn't quite play out the way they'd hoped. I guess we'll never know. Thanks for listening to this episode of Tales of the Troubles. If you enjoyed this episode or any others, please like or comment to help the algorithm reach other like-minded people. To ensure you never miss an episode, please click the follow button and enable notifications. If you have family or friends who would also like this podcast, please share. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we take a closer look at December 1970.